Uh, okay, let's get things started. So, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. My name's John Pidgeon, and we're talking about singles, buying property and building a portfolio. And in actual fact, the buying property part and the building a portfolio, not a lot changes in that sense. But what I wanted to double down on tonight was, in fact, being a single and how we can navigate through, because it is very different from buying with another party, whether that be in a joint venture or someone that we're in a relationship with. So we'll kick things off. Those that are listening in the replay, thank you for tuning in. Those who are live, you get have the ability to ask any questions, and hopefully we can get to some of them. We're probably about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how the Q&A process goes and how much I ramble on. But as always, these webinars are brought to you free of charge, so feel free to come and go as often as you need to. But it's really the only forum where I sit in and can field various questions, and you've got my sole attention in a group forum, over and above paying for a clarity call or something like that. So with that said, everything that is as relayed tonight is not financial advice, as general information only. So who am I? If you're listening in for the first time, I run a podcast called This is Property. I founded This is or My Millennial Money back in the day with Glenn James. He founded it, but sort of knocked me on the shoulder and said we should get together and start a podcast. So some 6 or 7 years ago, that's what we started to do. And today it's still kicking and screaming. We gave it 12 months and we are still here today. So we are extremely passionate about providing anyone who's prepared to listen with a whole heap of knowledge and education, because we feel we've got something to offer, and those that don't think that don't tune in anyway. So I started property investing back in 1999, and so I'm a 77 model. I'm driving home from football training tonight. My son says there's a 79 series, Dad, as if young teenagers want these days. And I said, well, I'm a 77 series. It looks in better nick than I do. I run a coaching business called Solvere, which is teaching someone how to fish, essentially, whether that be an online forum at your own pace, with a whole heap of tools and resources and videos from myself, which I'll talk to you about at the end, and also a 12-month one-on-one coaching program, which is me exclusive in one-on-one meetings, as well as all of our tools and resources and ongoing motivation. Envisage Property is a buyer's agent service which goes and sets strategy for clients and finds property for them anywhere around the country. Well, when I say anywhere, probably 90% of the locations that we think are relevant when we're buying real estate in this great country. So before I get into the budget, which sort of starts with a bit of a boring bit of knowledge happening tonight, but so I grew up in country Victoria and currently living on the central coast of New South Wales with a wife and 3 kids, 10 or 11, 12 and 14. I wanted to start, before we go into the whole singles and buying property bit, with a bit of federal budget 24 updates, and they released, and they always do, a bit of a peak view of what's happening tonight and what's about to happen, which is going to be released tomorrow, of course. They only released the good bits, but essentially for anything evolved around property, it's a $11.3 billion package that the national government are releasing. 9.3 billion is put towards a 5-year national agreement for homelessness and social and affordable housing, and absolutely that needs to be done and more. So that's good that's that amount of money being put towards this national disaster that we've got in our hands. $1 billion policy for crisis, including domestic violence for women and kids, which also is which is awesome. And it's reallocated money. So it's not extra money that they've factored in. They've taken it from somewhere else and said, yeah, we need to focus on this DV that is absolutely out of control as well, which is, I'm sitting here as a Caucasian male, sad to say that it's just, yeah, it's not on. I'm very angry with the world in terms of how we let this stuff happen. So hopefully this $1 billion goes towards sort of combating that as best we can. $1 million to get homes built sooner, i.e. building roads, infrastructure, sewer, energy, whatever you need when you're building and creating new homes. So yeah, whether that be sewer, whether that be electricity, whether that be water, whether that be new roads, parks, gardens, etc. So which again is a good thing. Generally, the states need to act over and above this. So the national government's saying, yeah, this is what we're providing. Righto, states, get on board and go and do your bit within each state, which is where the grey area comes in respect to what actually ends up getting done as a result of this budget. So what's hidden in the budget? Who knows? We'll find out later tonight or tomorrow as to what wasn't given and what they have overlooked and what they probably need to spend more attention to. But in any case, they always tell you the good bits and brush over the parts that they probably need to focus on as well. The general facts are there's a massive supply and demand issue in the sense that there's undersupply and over demand. We're not building enough homes in Australia at the rate that people are coming into the country and indeed staying longer and living longer because of medicine and a whole heap of other things. So that's not going to change anytime soon. So yes, it's great that we've got 11.3 billion to combat a lot of these issues, but it's not going to be an overnight fix. So I can't see supply and demand being back into kilter at least in the next 2 to 3 years. And that is in any sector, units, apartments, houses, etc. So that bodes well for the property investor, unfortunately. And I suppose I'm talking to the converted here tonight, and some would call us capitalist. But at the end of the day, we're sticking our neck out saying we want to create wealth through property. In the meantime, house people along the journey. But yeah, it's good time to be in real estate if we can simply get into the market for the first time and then re-enter for a second or third time over this next 3-year period because of a supply and demand. And it's just simple mathematics. When there's not enough of something, the price goes up because the demand is high and the supply is in fact low. So there you go. That's my 5 cents on the budget. Oh, actually, there's some infrastructure stuff that does come into our conversation around property. So Canberra's light rail project gets a $50 million funding injection from Lake Burley Griffin to Woden. Sunshine Coast Rail Line Stage 1 will get 1.15 billion in the budget, helping fund the extension from Beewar to Caloundra. Now you look at that, right, and say, well, 1.15 billion for the rail on the Sunshine Coast, right? Yes, absolutely. It'll benefit a lot of the locals there, but we're committing $1 billion nationally to domestic violence. Okay, but more is being spent on the rail from Beewar to Caloundra. So you go figure. That's an example of what's hidden in the budget is the actual real numbers and how that stacks up. Victoria getting extra 3.25 billion, would you believe, for the northeast link, which is the freeway ring road, opening in 2028. And then Queensland, for all you Queenslanders, the Bruce Highway gets 467 million funding injection for road improvements. And don't roads need to be improved anywhere around the country? Unbelievable the state of disrepair our roads are, not just major roads, but anywhere around the country through overuse. And again, that comes as a byproduct of an overpopulated region. Jamie, thanks for the comparison. Good to hear the real figures relative to each other. Yes. And look, I just put 2 and 2 together there, Jamie. There's people way smarter out there that'll analyze it in far greater detail than I will. But yeah, $1 billion sounds a lot. But at the end of the day, there's billions and billions of dollars getting wasted in other areas that I believe aren't as important as this. Well, these two disasters, but one DV is yeah, it's just shocking how it's all taking place. All right, on to the stuff that we really came here for. So, how is it different when I'm single? Now, I suppose what I wanted to start with here was what type of singles are there? And the most obvious one early days is, well, I'm 18, I can now get a loan from the bank because I'm an adult in Australia, depending on how much I earn as to how much I can lend. But generally, my first attack on my first property is as a single person. The second type of single is someone that through no rhyme or reason have separated with their partner, and as a result, they're newly single after a breakup, and as a result are now on their own 2 feet, and with shouldering the responsibility of going into the market, sometimes for the first times, but often for the second time when proceeds are split and funds distributed, etc. It's now fending for oneself. Okay, so they're the main types of singles that we're talking about here tonight, regardless of gender. Okay, we understand that when someone says singles, the big improvement that I've seen through property investing, both personally through our work with Envisage Property, but also generally the stats are showing this, is the increased number of single females entering the market on their own as an investment or owner occupier, which I think is fantastic. Okay, and I do a lot of clarity calls with single females who have massive concern around their future, right, and the understanding the security benefit that comes with buying your own home. And we'll talk about strategy later on, but the importance of that security being number one, and then everything else being sort of needs to fit in, but behind that number one outcome of feeling secure. There's no doubt that the mindset has a big part to play when we are a single person. Heavier shoulders, it's all on me. I need to make the decision. There's no one to share our thoughts with that are investing the time and money that I am. Yes, I can go to a third party for opinions and thoughts, but at the end of the day, I'm the one actually spending the money, and I'm the one looking after the mortgage. And that's the I suppose the thing I wanted to get to the bottom of tonight was, all right, if we are going in single, how are we approaching it? And it definitely needs to be somewhat of a positive mindset where I know I want security, I know I want safety, I know I want a future. And if someone else comes into my life at some stage down the track, that's great, but I'm witnessing that as an absolute bonus, and I'm going to forge a way ahead by myself. How does my gender affect my approach? Oh. Now, my gender affects my approach in a number of ways, and this is purely me having dealt with clients for the last 15 years or so. Is I definitely see the males more of a blasé approach to real estate, and we're maybe not as looking at in depth and doing as much research, and as a result, it's easy come, easy go. Whereas I do see the females putting a lot more work into it, a lot more due diligence because of maybe that wanting to have that security, and a little bit more cautious around spending their money. Now, whether that be a product of the environment growing up, there's a thousand different reasons as to why that approach is going to be different. But understand, listening now, what my personality is and what my upbringing has been, right? Am I treated differently to my my brother or my sister, and how does that affect my decision making? Okay. Serviceability and deposits and savings can alter. All right, so we've got to be thinking, well, how much can I service? Have I got siblings? Have I got kids? Am I in a de facto relationship? Have I Am I first got a single starting out and just got raw savings? Am I not saving enough? Understanding your situation to say, how can I improve my serviceability and how can I improve my savings and my deposits? Combining those two together, I'm now have the ability to take action around buying my first property for the first time. And I suppose it's here where we sit back and say, okay, can I afford to buy my own home locally, or do I need to go and invest somewhere else because of the price point that I'm coming in at? Or do I need to wait 2 or 3 years before I can get myself into the market because I haven't got enough of a deposit yet? All right. We also might have a think about this at that stage and say, well, maybe it's a joint venture that I can take on. So I'm a single person, yes, but that doesn't mean I can't join up and partner with someone that maybe friends or family or someone in your life that is also wanting to do the same thing. And they can bring to the table either extra deposits amounts or increased servicing because they're on a similar wage to me and we've essentially double the income, or the income's even higher than what mine might be. Right. We want to be able to overcome any fears and surrounding yourself with really good people. Again, when we're a couple, it's very easy to bounce things off each other and make a decision just with the two of us. But when we're a single, there's an overwhelming fear of, okay, it's all on me. I hope I don't stuff this up. I need to understand, what are my fears? What are the things that are maybe holding me back, or what's my apprehension going forward that's potentially going to slow down that process of buying my first property and then potentially my subsequent properties. Okay. Again, thinking about your situation, and if you're put into that situation, how we would actually handle that. And surrounding yourself with the right people is super, super important. Right. So I'll give you an example. I spoke to someone the other day, and they were in a clarity call, and it was a young female starting out, and the father was on the call, and the father was extremely protective of the daughter, which absolutely you would be, young daughter wanting to get into the market for the first time. But it was clear that he was holding her back in some way, shape, or form from her actually taking action, right? And she could see that, but she knew that, okay, dad's there to assist me. He cares for me, etc. I'm going on this journey for the first time. He's done it before, right? But maybe his results or his history of property in general for himself personally maybe hadn't turned out the way he wanted it to. So all of that apprehension and fear was then put on to his daughter when she was first going to the market, potentially without the actual need for her to have all that burden, right? So who are you surrounding yourself with, and who are the people that maybe care for you in life and love you and do all these things for us in our life, and they'll always be there for us, but we might not have the discussions around, what do you think? What do you think I should be doing in respect to buying property? That's where you might outsource it to a professional in that space. And then we talk to others like mortgage brokers and a good accountant and a good solicitor and conveyancer, and make sure the structures are set up well on the way in. Okay. But I do see it a lot where surrounding yourself personally with the wrong people can set you back, not set you or push you forward, right? And when I say wrong people, I don't mean you've got to get them out of your life completely. It's just more of a case of, okay, maybe I'm not going to come to them when it's got to do with my property investing, or my buying my first property. Like any good investor or anyone who buys a big ticket item such as property, we need to understand what the future may hold for us. What are the variables going forward in our life? i.e., if I'm a newly single person that has some siblings, right? What are their ages, and what does 10 years time look for me look like for me? How old are they going to be? What schools are they going to go to, or will they be finished school, etc.? If I'm someone that's in my early 20s wanting to buy my first property, what does 10 years look like for me? Am I buying locally just because all my friends are? Am I likely to go away to university? Am I likely to travel around the world? Am I going to stay in this area altogether? What does my occupation look like? What do my incomes look like? And without freaking you out too much, 10 years into the future, we should be jotting some notes down to say, this is what I would expect I'd be doing in 10 years' time. Okay, now we know that'll change, but at least we've had some thought around the things that we might be able to see ourselves doing in that 10 years' time. All right, I want to, at this stage, and I hope we're allowed to do it. Here we go. Okay, I have a poll for you guys to fill in. So if you should be able to see that in front of you, what's the biggest fear around property? I've just got a few there, but when you tick other, I just want to maybe get you to expand in the chat room as to what that might be for you. And I'm going to explore all of these answers in a little bit of detail because it's really important that we overcome this part of it and know that we can move forward free of fear. Does that mean it's free of risk? No, because any investing will come with an element of risk. Any decision that we make in life will also come with an element of risk, but it's removing the fear is the important part at this stage. All right, so I'm going to end the poll. Is everyone done? I believe we're pretty close. All right, ending it now. Share the results. All righty, so 7% said the biggest fear is tenants. 48% buying a dud. Wow, that's a high percentage. 14% said losing money. 17% said losing job. And 14% said other. So let's look at the other and why. Okay, getting priced out of the market before I get in. That's a very good fear. Gabrielle, other, stretching myself too far. I'm presuming that's with repayments and cash flow. Correct me if I'm wrong. Jesse says, making sure I'm making the right choice that will help for the next one. Okay. Very, very good and most common responses that I see. All right, so Gabrielle says, yes, that is correct, the cash flow thing. Righto. So let's start with fear around tenants. Okay, and I don't want you to think that I'm thinking about this in a blasé manner. It's just that when you've been doing it and transacting often enough, you become very, I suppose, educated and confident about doing it again. And it's a rinse and repeat process. But tenants, how do we overcome the fear of tenants maybe trashing their joint or not paying on time or whatever that might be? Okay, so most of the time or all the time, we've got insurances in place to do that. That cover any of that malicious damage or loss of rent. And there's even insurance now for tenants that won't move out of your house. Okay, so you can take out a policy that includes tenants not paying your rent, but also not moving out of your house. Like it's a double whammy. No income, but then not being able to get the person out is also a nightmare. So you can actually get insurance for that now, which is pretty cool. So everywhere you look, you should be able to come up with an insurance policy that covers majority of the things that go wrong with tenants. Okay, now I can honestly say in the 25 years I've been investing, I haven't had a complete horror story. I've had to make some claims in different situations, but I would say over the 25 years, if I've made 5 claims, I'd be probably stretching it. So that's one every 5 years, which I think when I've transacted in over 15 properties, I would say that that's probably not too bad. Okay, so we hear the horror stories, we think the horror stories. It's always worst case scenario in our own mind because that's, as humans, that's what we do. We think negative first. We've got to change the transcript. But it's actually not that bad out there. And again, That's not coming in from a blasé point of view. That's coming in from someone who's witnessed it. Now, let's get to this 48% of buying a dud. Buying a dud is something that is on most people's lips, right? Now, the definition of dud is different for everyone, isn't it? But a dud is something that's, for me anyway, I sit back and in 5 years or 10 years' time, it hasn't made me money. Okay, I'll talk about some things that we can do to avoid making that mistake. Are we guaranteed not to make that mistake? Absolutely not. Okay, but those that have absolutely done nothing are still doing nothing today. So 100% of people that take action have got a result one way or the other. 100% of people that haven't taken action have got 0 results. Losing money, 14%. That's a very common one. So the biggest combat to losing money is not having to sell. So if we don't buy a dud, or even if we do buy a dud and it hasn't worked for us in the first 3 to 5 years, we just need to understand that we're always in a cash flow position where we never have to sell. So what does never having to sell mean? Well, on the way in, we've understood the yield. We've understand the repayments. They're more than comfortable on our current incomes if we're owner occupier. If we're investor, we've factored in vacancy rates. We've factored in our insurance costs and all the running costs associated with the property. We've factored in interest rate rises. We may have some income protection. We've got all these insurances built in as well that's going to mitigate the downside. All right. So most people that don't make money in real estate have to sell prematurely when they didn't want to, and that's essentially when they lose money. So we can mitigate that on the way in. Losing my job, it's a very common one. However, unemployment is at around 4 to maximum 5% in most areas around the country today. So it's pretty low. What's the likelihood of me losing my job in my current employment or industry and not being able to pick up one that pays me the same amount of money? It's very slim for most people. Now, if I'm in a job that's maybe a what would I say, speculative, and I'm on really good money, say 200 grand a year, and if I lose that job, I'm not going to get another one, but the other one or the next one that I get will be 100 grand, then I'm working my money on 100 grand. I'm doing all my analysis on the 100K because the 200 is inflated at the moment. I'm working with a client at the moment who's in that exact situation. We're doing the numbers as though that person's on 100 grand because we know the 200 is not going to last forever. Okay. So losing the job, we can mitigate. And then the other, so let's quickly go through the other, getting priced out of the market before we get in, Jamie. So that one is a beauty, and we need to ensure that we're pulling out all stops to get in to the market as soon as possible. Now, that's got an asterisk next to it in the sense that we may be needing to shift markets, i.e., we're currently looking in this market or we're currently saving for a property in this particular market, but now by the time we're actually ready to strike, we have to be in another market because we're priced out of this current one. Okay, so have your A, B, and C categories to know that if I can't get in the A's, then the B's still going to be all right. We need to be able to pivot left or right if the market's moving ahead before we're actually in a position to buy. But if we're sitting there saying, well, I want to go out for dinner tonight, but I also want to save for a property, and we make the former decision, not the latter, then it's not helping us. So if we're pulling out all stops, number one, and then being realistic about what other markets we can get into, then we can mitigate a lot of that because we're realistic about the price of the markets that we're coming into. Stretching myself too far, Gabrielle, that's just simply a cash flow thing. We've thought of every buffer underneath the sun. Now, spoke to someone the other day. They had 6 months worth of emergency funds up their sleeve as well as saving for a house deposit. We said, okay, do we need 6 months? Well, 6 months allows me to sleep at night. Okay, let's keep 6 months then. So everyone's different with their risk profile, but we need to make sure that everywhere we look, we've got buffers up our sleeve, emergency funds for our personal life and property buffers for our property portfolio. We've factored in things like I mentioned before, vacancy rates low, interest rates rising somewhat. Now, again, had someone a few weeks ago that was factoring in a 9% interest rate. Okay, that historically hasn't happened when we've seen a trend of 15 interest rate rises. Okay, so for it to go from 6.5 to 9% right now in the next 6 to 12 months, extremely unlikely, if not impossible. All right, so we need to peg that back a little and be really, I suppose, realistic with what we're setting as buffers. All right. Yeah, so they're making sure I'm making the right choice, Jesse says, that will help me for the next one. Okay, so again, that's an element of, well, it's out of my control in a lot of cases because government infrastructure and supply and demand into the area and those sort of things. But I can historically look at what that particular market's done and what that asset type has done over the previous 20 years, and I can make an assessment going forward. Am I guaranteed that it's going to repeat itself? No, I'm not, but I'm giving myself the every best chance of going and buying something that's going to perform. I'll give you an example of something to the contrary. A suburb in Melbourne called St Kilda. House prices have invariably doubled in the last 10 to 12 years. Unit prices have gone up about 15%. Okay, so if we're going in expecting and we go and buy a unit in St Kilda and we expect it to double in the next 10 to 12 years, we haven't done our homework. But if we're going in expecting it to go up by 15 to 20% in the next 10 years, then we're on track with what history's told us. Okay, so we've got to do our research. We've got to be realistic about what's happened before us and what's likely to happen again. Okay, but the one thing out of our control is capital growth. So that means we need to look at our own backyard first, understand our own cash flow position, and don't pay overs when we're buying, going in, and potentially have the ability to add some value to something as well. There we go. Thank you for filling in that poll, everyone, because that's a really important part of what I'm saying tonight, because the rest is really the fluffy stuff of jumping on realestate.com and searching for property and then going around in circles and looking at units and looking at apartments and looking at houses and looking at different locations and throwing our hands in the air and saying, well, I just won't do anything because I'm scared about what the results might bring me. Double that or triple that fear factor when I'm actually single. And that's the thing that we want to get across today is I want you to jot down everything that you are scared about, have a fear around, have some sort of apprehension about, and say, look, realistically, after listening in tonight, what's the likelihood of that happening? And conversely, what can I do to prevent it from happening? Or if it does happen, how do I suppose limit the downside, i.e. my tenant ruins my place, I've got insurance. Right. Okay, interest rates rise, I've factored in a buffer there. I've got 2 weeks of vacancy factored into my numbers because that's what the vacancies told me in this particular area and this particular asset type that I'm buying. Feel free to ask any questions or observations as we go as well. All right. So rounding all that together, we need to say to ourselves, right, what do we want in 10 years? What are our long-term goals? What's our cash flow management plan for savings and for general life? How is this property going to impact my cash flow management plan? Now, what will I be saving? So if we're sitting there saying, well, if I buy this property, I won't have any savings, we're redlining our cash flow in our life, and that's dangerous. Okay, so I still need to be looking at saying, okay, if I buy this property and I've factored in all the variables, the interest rates, the vacancy rates, all these things out of our control, and I'm still saving money, we know that we've got a little bit up our sleeve should something else unexpected occur that I wasn't ready for. What is our emergency buffer? How much does that need to be for us as an individual? Because as I mentioned before, the whole 6 months versus 3 months versus 2 months versus whatever you're comfortable with is really the answer there. And then just as important is understanding your risk profile in your life. If I go and buy something, what's the implications of that? With all of that said, we need to take action. We cannot sit here and say, I'm just going to give it 12 months, because invariably what happens is 12 months time comes and where I was looking has gone up 50 grand or 100 grand or 30 grand. Right. I spoke to someone yesterday. Same things happen. It's actually been 4 years where they'd been sitting on the fence, umming and ahhing about different locations and different type of properties and different investment types, and it still hasn't brought them to the market to buy something, and they've finally realized that they're now outsourcing it because their apprehension, their lack of, I suppose, risk tolerance and lack of maybe knowledge of the markets have meant that they haven't been able to take any action at all, which is exactly the last thing you want to be doing. If financially you're in a position where you want to take action and you know that having a roof over your head or building wealth through property is something that you want to do. If you sit back and say, no, I haven't actually got the risk profile desired for property, then don't do property. We need to go and look at other alternatives to investing. All right, so I'm going to skim over a lot of this stuff because it's probably stuff that you may have heard us talk about on the podcast, or you may have seen in previous webinars, but I'm just reinforcing a lot of the stuff that is, regardless of whether a singles, coupled, married, single, whatever, it applies to us all. First of all, how much can we lend and how much do we need? What do we need to come up with in terms of deposits and stamps, LMI, etc.? Am I in an occupation where I can get LMI waived? Have got a good mortgage broker in my team? Do I need to pay stamp duty? Is it something where that as a first home buyer I can take advantage of it versus not using that and purely going investment, right? That's another thing that wasn't released in the budget, which I'm angry about, is stamp duty, right? Melbourne, Victorians, the poor old Vics have missed out again. Like 600K is their first homeowner stamp duty concession. What the hell can we buy in Melbourne for 600,000? It's ridiculous. But anyway, that's just me having a rant. Okay, cash or equity. Are we using cash or equity when we go and buy? Equity obviously is something we can only use once we have a property. If it's our first property, it needs to be a cash deposit or at least a parental guarantor, which I think is highly effective and should be explored if we haven't looked at it already, especially if mum or dad are up for it. Principal place of residence, is that going to be our first property, or is it going to be an 8 to 10 year plan? We're going to build an investment property portfolio first. Some people unfortunately don't have a choice because they can't afford a principal place now. And if someone said to me principal place in 3 years time when I can afford the deposit, or an investment property now, there's a good chance majority of the time that I'd be saying investment now, because who knows what 3 years will bring, especially when the supply demand is so much out of kilter. Understanding our risk profile and our lending, we've spoken about our property cycle. So understanding where we are in the cycle. Okay, we're somewhere like Perth or Adelaide at the moment. We're in a very heated market and it's been hot for a reasonable amount of time. Does that mean that it's going to start to slow down a little bit? History says that it probably will. Any good heated market lasts about 12 to 18 months, and they've both probably experienced that. So the end, if it's not close, it's not too far away. And then generally what follows that is a period of maybe retraction or a flatter period. And then fear versus risk. I've banged on enough about the whole fear thing, but what is the risk? So the fear is false evidence. The risk is real, isn't it? So understanding that we're okay to take the risk. We're okay to jump in the car and drive down the street. We know we could, someone could run into us, but we're prepared to take that risk because we know we've done it before. We've got airbags. We hopefully stay on the speed limit and stay on the right side of the road. And yes, the worst that can happen is that someone runs into me, but the likelihood of that happening is pretty slim if I do the right thing. Goes without saying a lot of this stuff, but it's surprising how much I see it. we need to have clean credit files, i.e. don't let the energy bill come 4 times with eviction power turn off or whatever that might be, right? We've got to pay our bills on time. We've got to have clean conduct, right? There's a massive amount of visibility from banks these days, so they can see exactly what you've done with your life with just by reading the statements. Okay, so don't spend something in there that has a detrimental effect on your lending, i.e. afterpay, i.e. online betting, something that's consistently coming out on a regular basis that's not considered good spending, right? And there's no real savings plan in place. Now, banks don't require you to have a massive amount of savings plan up your sleeve, but it's not going to work against you if you've got one. And again, goes without saying, but the no bad debt will reduce in wages going forward. So again, time and time again, we've seen people come to us, say, right, I can lend 600K, and then all of a sudden we've gone and got ourselves a car loan. Or we didn't tell someone that we were going to quit our job, or we were taking a pay cut that was 30 grand less, and now our borrowing's gone from 600 to 450, and our dreams being wiped away in front of us because of these bad decisions that we've made. So understand these are basic things. 101 finance. Don't fall into the trap of following them. What team of people do we need? We should be jotting down what we need on our team, what we've already got. Okay. Now some of them come and go. Some of them will be with us for the long term. Okay. Mortgage broker. I've had my mortgage broker for 6 or 7 years now. Accountant I've probably had for 10 to 12 years. Lawyer I've had for about that similar time. Conveyancer is relevant in your state that you're buying in, not the state that you live in. And then buyer's agent or property coach. Do we need one or the other? Who knows? It's up to you as to whether you feel that you've got this on your own and you just need to take some action and spend some time doing the research, or do you think you need to outsource it because it's going to happen in a much quicker, more efficient result because there's people that do it every day for a living? The secondary team, again, they're the ones that are going to come and go in our life. The real estate agents, necessary evil, property management team looking after our properties, building and pest inspectors, depreciation companies that do a depreciation schedule on our properties, insurance companies, and then anything else that's relevant to us through the journey. So there's a lot of people that we have both primary and secondary. Just jot down what you need and also the ones that you already have, and continue to question and stay involved with them so that you can increase your knowledge along the way. This is a quick look at what it might look like for someone who wants to build a portfolio. Now, this, of course, is just fictitious figures, but you get a feel for this now. So, okay, first property, year one, has a loan amount of 400, so we purchased for 700, and we now have some equity up our sleeve after the first few years of owning it, right? We've taken some equity out of that property. We've maybe built up the offset through our good savings habits, and we've gone and bought property 2 in year 5 with the 100K of equity release. So we purchased it for 7. It might be now worth 800 or 900, but we've been able to release the equity based on either paying it down if that was our principal place, or just simply the equity and the increase in value over that 5-year journey. We've then went and bought the second property using all of the bank's money. Now, is that risky? Well, again, if we do our numbers and our cash flow right, it shouldn't be any riskier than putting in our own cash, okay? The key criteria there is we do not have to sell the property. So we've bought it for 500K, we've got a loan amount of 450, but with the 50K of deposit and the 20K of stamp has come from the 100 grand of equity release from that first property. The other fees associated, buyer's agent, buffer, and any building and pest inspections, etc. So we've used 100 and probably 4 or 5% of the bank's money in this example. Is that risky play? Well, it comes down to the cash flow in your property. If the tenant is paying majority of the running costs for this property, then it's no riskier than you having to fend for the mortgage by yourself. Yeah. It's the ninth wonder of the world is equity, using the bank's money and you not having to put down any of your own hard-earned money. You want to save that for your principal place of residence. That will either sit in an offset or saving up that cash deposit for when you do buy your own rock. And then we fast forward to year 10. Some people might go more aggressively in this because they can save quicker, etc. We buy a 600K property, again, using the equity from either property 1 or property 2, whichever one works at the time, with the loan amount at 500. Again, our deposit and costs we've got from using the bank. So if we look at this portfolio, and you may have already done the maths on this, we've got a total value of 1.8. But if we strip it right back to the beginning, we may have gone in buying that 700K property with just a 10% deposit plus stamps, which is roughly about 100K. So we've put 100K in to build a portfolio of 1.8 over 10 years, okay? Which over time, as we know with investments, the rents increase, and even if we're not paying the principal down, the cash flow will eventually be a positive one, so that we wake up in 10, 15 years time and your portfolio is being paid for by the tenants living in the property. We feel good about housing someone, and the portfolio is stress-free because it's cash flow neutral or even slightly positive as well. That's a quick crash course on building the portfolio. All right, so we think back and say, okay, as a single, can I do this? Well, it starts at the start. What can we save? What's my mindset? How do I approach this? What knowledge gaps do I need to cover off on? How much will the banks lend? And how quickly can I get into my first property? Because remember, $1 million property was a 500K property at one stage in its existence. It was also a 250K property at one time in its existence, right? Yes, it might have been some time ago, but property prices, generally speaking, head north in growth over the journey if you're buying the right asset. Now, yes, 9 times out of 10 in my mind, majority of that is going to be what people want. What do people want in this world, or in Australia at least? Singles want to be couples, want to be families a lot of the time, or singles want to work from home and have a separate bedroom and then another bedroom for someone to stay in, right? So that demands, majority of the time, it demands 3 bedrooms, right? 3 bedrooms. So that eliminates all the 1s and 2 bedrooms around the country. So if we're looking at that, we then say, okay, can I buy a 3-bedroom townhouse? Can I buy a 3-bedroom house which comes with an associated amount of land? Can I get the kids to run around the backyard with a dog? Is that what the general area wants? Is that what's shown the most growth over the journey? Talk about this stuff all year. Just realised the time. And I've only gone through about a quarter of the slides. Again, I'm going to skip over this a little bit, but just again, you'll get a copy of the replay of this so you can have a look at this in more detail. But we need to get answers when we're buying, whether it be owner-occupier or whether it be investment. We need to get answers to this 8 parts or points to our strategy. Now, when it's our owner-occ, the only thing we don't need to take into account is this gross yield at the bottom, which is our rents versus the purchase price. However, it's replaced by cash flow. It's replaced by, okay, how much cash do I need in my life to run the mortgage? Because I'm solely responsible for that mortgage, no one else. If I live in that property and it's mine, I'm solely responsible for it. So I need to make sure that I've got the required cash up my sleeve each month should interest rates rise, etc., to cover that mortgage and more. Benefit of a 3-bedder, is I can get my mates in and they can help cover the running costs. I've got a 18-year-old nephew who just moved to Geelong, and he's saying, Unc, how can I get my first property? And I'll say, son, no, he's not my son, my nephew. Buy 3 bedrooms and rent the other 2 out, and you can live in one of those rooms. Anonymous, to confirm, looking at a 3-bedder townhouse is much better than a 1 or 2-bedder unit. Oh, very good question. Generally speaking, the answer is yes, but we also look at, and story for another day, but we also look at how many's in the complex, right? What's the supply and demand in the area? Is it on a busy road? Is it on a no-through road? All those indicators impact whether we're looking at a 2-bed unit versus a 3-bed townhouse. But generally speaking, when I look at 3-bedroom townhouses for people, they're going to be much superior than a 2-bedroom unit or a 1-bedroom unit in the same area. Definitely a 1-bedroom unit anyway. So yeah, I try to strive for 3 if I can. But if it's something to live in and I'm priced out at the 3-bed, can I get myself a 2-bed in that area? Yes, better than nothing, absolutely. And I get to live in my own area. And I have, again, if I'm single, I get to have that security, that roof over my head, which sometimes I cannot put a price on. Okay, so I'm combining emotional, which we don't always do, but we need to when we're thinking about security and having a roof over my head, with the ultimate of wealth creation through property. If we had all the stars aligning, we'd get our 3-bed on a good sized block of land, backyard, great area, right? Not everyone can afford that. So we strip it back and say, what am I prepared to forego in order to get my property for the first time? Hopefully that has helped there. All right. Again, crash course on this. Reach out if you need some further info on any of this stuff. What's the 20-year historical growth showing? Is the population growing or slowing? What's the 20-year vacancy rate showing? Is the government spending money in the area? What's the economy diversification like? What percentage of homes are owner outright? And what's the percentage of investors? We want high owner occupiers in the area, not high percentage of investors, by the way. And what's the average household income in comparison to the median house price, right? We don't want to go into area where the median house price is 800,000 and the household weekly income's about $1,200, because everyone's at the peak of their repayments if they've got a mortgage. But if 40% of the suburb or the town own their home outright, they don't have to worry about a mortgage. They don't have to worry about increased interest rates. So combining all these stats together give us a really good feel for areas that we can hone in on, which de-risks ourselves from all of those fears that we've got that we spoke about at the start of the webinar. Jean, great question. Where can you go to find the 20-year growth and vacancies? Okay, one you have to pay for, one you don't. The 20-year vacancy rates are through a company or a website called sqmresearch.com.au, sqmresearch.com.au. The 20-year growth chart for houses and units in any area around the country is through CoreLogic or RP Data, which is a paid subscription. All right, I've got about 7 minutes. So if you've got some questions that you're burning to get answered tonight, please put them in there now and I can bank them up so I don't go too far over time. I appreciate your time schedule tonight. Growth versus cash, which one's more important? Well, cash is important if you have to sell because you haven't got enough cash, is the answer to that. So generally speaking, capital growth out of our control, cash very much in your control, right? So understand that they're both as important as each other, but how much is one important to you versus the other? We need to think about in your life. What are your income levels? Am I a single with 2 kids? What's the income levels like? Can I work full time? Do I have to be part time because of the kids, etc.? Am I just finishing uni? What's my projection of income likely to be in the next 5 to 10 years, etc., etc. What do most investors do? They go for what do most investors do? They go for growth, they disrespect the cash, and 5 years' time, someone like me come along and buys it off them. Family life stage cycle. Not to scare you for those that are in your early 20s, but those who are older will understand what I'm talking about here. A lot of people want to get married in life. That's great. What a lot of people want to have kids in their life. That's also great. All of those are totally optional. All I'm saying here in this situation is if we do, we want to go and understand that it's probably a 20-year at least life stage cycle where we enter this period of our life at 30 and maybe get out the other side at 50, just hypothetically speaking, with an example. Now, when I get out the other side at age 50, I'm getting closer to retirement or lifestyle phase. If I haven't done any investing through that stage, I am falling behind in respect to what I need to have choices later on in my life. So the key piece of advice in this part of it is don't stop investing just because you're entrenched in this family life stage cycle. If you're single and planning not to have kids, don't worry about this. You're on easy street. All right, so this is one for 20, 30 years time, and it's a good problem to have because if you have only got one property, then you don't have to worry about these options because you don't have them, right? So if you've got a portfolio of properties, you've got some good problems to make decisions around. So how do we transition from building a portfolio, consolidating that portfolio, but then living your life on your own terms? So there's a few options. We can keep all the properties and not pay down the debt. The rents just continue to be cash flow positive, and essentially your tenants are paying down your debt for you, but you're not physically contributing. Keeping all your properties but paying down your debt, so you might aggressively pay them down in conjunction with your tenants. Keeping all your properties and increasing your debt, which means taking on more debt closer to retirement because you know you're handing it over to your kids and you want to grow your portfolio wider because you know you've got the income to service in retirement because of your super or whatever else. Selling part of your portfolio to pay down your debt. Selling part of your portfolio and living off the profit, which is fun. Or the last one is selling the whole portfolio and go and have massive fun, right? Which is say, okay, I'm selling them all, I pay down all the debts, and I'm going to spend all the proceeds before I die and leave nothing to the next generation. That's totally up to you. Okay. All of these options are only options if we've built some sort of a portfolio. So what I wanted to do here was just show you, okay, this is a 20, 30-year plan. We're not thinking about the next 20 or 30 minutes. We're thinking, okay, how's this all play out in the end? I'm looking at getting my first property here this year, but what does it look like in the end? That's what we're building ourselves up to, setting goals and continuing to stay on track and consistent through the journey. All right, Warren Buffett says, when others show fear, I show courage. When others show courage, I show fear. When COVID hit, the pandemic, everyone showed fear. Those that showed courage, guess what happened to property results? They went up and they took advantage of that and they cleaned up. What have I learned? What do I need to change? What are my next steps? 3 questions I want you to ask yourselves. What have I learned? What do I need to change? What are my next steps? All right, so some shameless plugging here tonight. If you like what you heard tonight and you've heard me for the first time or heard me a million times over, either way, I'm giving the opportunity to have a 15-minute free chat. Find a time in the calendar. You just simply take a photo of the QR code. In between, in the middle, is our online property masterclasses, beginner and advanced. The options are there for you as well if you want to take education to the next level and do it all in your own pace at your own time, as well as our online property coach. You can fill out an express of interest and someone can contact you in regards to that. Over and above all that, our BA service through Envisage Property, and if you want to tune into any of the resources, you've got my book, which is, where is it? There. for those that haven't seen it, sort your property out and build your future. You can jump onto sortyourpropertyout.com and there's some resources there around that as well. All right, I'm going to stop sharing now. Any questions? Anything else that anyone wanted to add? No, I think we are good. All right. Hey, thanks everyone for tuning in tonight. Hope you took one or two things away from that. I definitely enjoyed presenting some info to you. If there's anything that anyone needs, feel free, as I said, to jump on those websites, click on the QRs, and we can have a yarn. All right, Christy, Jamie, thank you. The first QR code doesn't seem to be valid. Did you have another link? Well, I'll be buggered. Was that the 15-minute? Yeah, Christina, don't you know it? So much to cover. We only just brushed the surface too tonight. Yeah, all right. Bear with me, Christy. I will get our team to send out the 15-minute link to everyone tomorrow. How's that sound? That's a deal, and it won't even cost you. All right, done. Okay, till next time, enjoy your evening. Take care.